Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about DMZ Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I think that opening is very indicative of a lot of stuff. Obviously, Parko showing like a young Christian. Like, I wasn't expecting that to turn the way it did, because at first he's like aiming at a deer, and I thought like, okay, like that kind of makes sense. But then it's like it moves over, and when Alma is in his sights, at first I was like, wait, is this going to be set up like this, but in actuality it's going to be a paintball or something? Like, that's why I was wondering, like, was there going to be something like a different, like, what would, it kept evolving in my head what that opening was, and then it turns out, no, it was like a real bullet, and then, like, it turns out it's Alma's nightmare. Which, really quickly, I should also note, I should have brought this up last episode. It was going through my mind, but I didn't think about bringing it up, is Alma's played by Rosario Dawson, right? So I think it's interesting she's playing kind of like a character like Alma who's in the medical field. If you're unaware, in the Marvel Netflix shows, she was one of the characters that was kind of the connective tissue between all the shows, and that's kind of the role she kind of played in that regard, too. She was kind of a nurse, so I was like, oh, it's just kind of an interesting element, but obviously, she ends up having to track down her ex, Parko, which even he was kind of like, he wasn't like dumbfounded to see her. He was surprised to see her, though. But obviously, like, he's moved on, him and Carmen, which it seems like there's a lot of history there that we don't know about. Because I'm wondering, like, is it one of those situations where Alma was actually part of the group that Parko, like does her and Parko have like a further history, like they knew each other for a very long time and maybe she got mixed up with some of like the gang stuff he was a part of? Or was it just a thing of she got associated with the bad boy and was kind of fine with that until she found out how much of a bad boy he was, how much of a bad influence he was? Like, I'm assuming it was always there, and maybe it's just that thing of, oh, I wised up and finally kind of got away from all that. But Carmen's got beef with her, and even Alma's like, oh yeah, Carmen, like, all you ever did in the past used to be is jealous of me, and it seems like even now you're still trying to be me, like, with your whole look and everything. So that leads to those two, like, not just like full-blown scrapping. And I love that, you know, initially, Parko's not going to get involved at all until, like, a painting of his gets, like, screwed up, and they're like, whoa, 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 and that's when, you know, he stops stuff. But essentially, they're trying to call her a rat, because it's like, right, Parko gets locked up, like, right before evacuation day, so they're suggesting she's the one that did that. And it's like, yeah, where were you in that 8 years he was locked up? She was like, I was locked up too, bitch. And I'm like, so the way she was talking about it almost seemed like Alma didn't know. Like, I don't know. Either she didn't know about the Carmen element of it all, or just didn't know all about any of that at all. Like, they're claiming she was the rat, but, like, did she? She never confirmed it, but she never, like, fully outright denied it either. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it was one of those things of she tried to get rid of Parko just so it made it easier for her to leave with Christian, just to try and get her son away from him. Because last episode, like, I saw the wrapped up hands and I thought, like, oh, he was fighting. But it's like, no, now they kind of flash back to it, because I didn't notice it before. He had gotten tattoos, and I think that's why she got super pissed at him, and that's why she slapped him. Because he tried so hard to be like his dad. You know, he wanted to be so much like Parko. And so, obviously for Alma, it's like, that's why I'm here. Like, I just want to know where Christian is. And, you know, he's like, yeah, but he don't want you to, like, you know, he enjoys his privacy, so get out of here. So, whatever the case may be, like, that entire group, even Caesar, like, yo, what's she doing here? So, like, there's a lot of history there that we haven't really dived into. And so, she ends up having to turn to the one person she can turn to, and that's Wilson. So, obviously, he's happy she's still here, but it seems like he didn't, because I was like, okay, it felt like he was hiding stuff from Alma, but it's like, he never correlated that Christian and Scale were the same person. It's not until she was like, all right, I never told you this, but Parko is Christian's dad, and it's like, right, everyone knows that Scale is Parko's kid, so if you're saying that, it was like, okay, your son is Scale, and that's why Wilson's like, dude, I'm not trying to get mixed up in this, because you doing all this will ultimately get you hurt, but the fact is, I can't afford to, like, make any big moves to help you, because if I did, that'd just start stuff, especially now when the debate's about to go down. And I love that he calls her Susie, but her name's like, what, Su Yin? And I love that it's that conversation of, you might try to pretend to be Wilson, but I know your real name. Don't ever kind of forget who you really are. Like, don't get so caught up in this character, this version of yourself you created to become stronger, to forget who you are at your core. Because she especially told him that, like, oh, like referencing these books about liars. And I'm like, oh, like, to me, it was to help him find out, like, right, there's only 3 people who know where his gold is hidden, and Skell ended up finding the gold. Like, he's jacked multiple spots where he's got the gold hidden. And so, because of that, he knows someone in one of the 3 people who knows those locations betrayed him. So it was more a metaphor for that. But I thought the way he was describing the story about, like, oh, that was interesting. I was like, it sounded like it was supposed to be like a metaphor for your life, like the you know. And so, like, it seems like her big thing is constantly giving him books correlating to liars. You know, because once again, it is the thing of, like, I know who you really are. Don't get it twisted. You know, don't lose sight of who you are in this whole, like, make-believe pretend thing that you're not who you are. So, I thought that was fascinating. And he has to be that person who kind of rules with an iron fist, which is ironic to say because he was actually in Iron Fist. I was thinking that just as I was forming the thought in my head to say, like, you know, because it's usually, like, you know, it's like, oh, someone ruling with an iron fist. But he doesn't seem like he's as crazy as Parko is, but he will go there if he has to. If he has to escalate, he will. So, it's like, right. It's a win-win situation. Either I do find out the person that's lying to me, or I pick the wrong person, but the true person will be revealed either way. So, he shoots one of the guys in the foot. He's like, cool, next time is going to be your mom's here, so I want you guys are the only ones who know, so either you tell you guys figure this out, or I'm going to bring your moms back here and kill them in front of you. So, it's kind of like, it's kind of your choice. And then immediately he's like, oh, I'm so sorry about all that business, because Alma had no idea what he was doing. So, that's also the thing of, like, it's the devil you know versus the devil you think you know. Because she knows Parko. She's known him through and through, but she doesn't know the man that Wilson became. But I think she's believing that at his heart, he's still the guy that she knew, like, between the conversations that they had. So, because this is all about, at the core of all this, is a third large party. It's not, one side, you got Parko. On the other side, you got Wilson. And then we get introduced to Ona, who is the middle ground. She is a middle ground with all the sway and all the push and the power. Because Ona, unlike Wilson and Parko, who basically gathered the guns and gold, she gathered the water. She has, like, basically all the supply of purified water in the DMZ. And that's what keeps her powerful. And that allows her to keep her neutrality. Parko wants her on her side because if you can get Ona on your side and have access to the water, that sways even more control in the DMZ. And Alma actually gave him advice on how to approach Ono. And it was like, right, a piece, like, show her your humanity, and that will be enough to sway her to your side. Because he was saying, like, Parko doesn't have the time and patience needed for someone like Ono to come to you. But it's like, no. Alma's like, my advice to you is show her your humanity, and once you show her that humanity, she will come to you in that regard. So, don't go to her like she will come to you type of thing. It's kind of what he was kind of hoping for too, so. But she ended up finding out where Skell lives, and he had obviously knew that his mom was in town. I don't know whether he had reached out to Parko or whether Parko had like called him in advance, but he's like, oh, you're right. I don't know, like he said, like, oh, he knew his mom was coming. Either Parko let him know last minute, like a little before she showed up, or he's just referencing in the past, like, oh, you always told me she was going to come. I think it was more so like he gave him, like, little heads up. And obviously for her to see how much her son has changed because she hasn't seen him in 8 years, which is also another correction from last episode. They were referencing something from 6 years ago. Maybe that was just kind of at the height of, like, the Civil War and stuff like that or something. But, like, everything went down, like, evacuation day. I could say evacuation. Evacuation day and all that, like, what we saw at the very beginning of the first episode. All of that was 8 years ago, so. But Skell doesn't even want her to refer to him as Christian. So it's like, all right. And so when the time comes, like, he confides in her, well, not confides, but tells her the truth of, I ran away. You didn't lose me. And it's like, that's why I was like, did, like, Parko convince you? Because it's like, there's no way she lost you, like, she lost you just like that. But for the past 8 years, she's blamed herself, being like, oh, I lost you. He's like, no, I ran away. And he says a line I thought was interesting where he's like, you never saw me for who I am. Dad kind of sees all, I think what he's trying to say is like, Parko sees me warts and all. He sees me for who I really am. You just see me as your baby boy, not the person I wanted to be. I finally get to be who I want to be. You know, as like even she was one before, like, you know, it's like, yeah, Skele's like the crown prince, and there's no like pulling him away from Parko's control. And he makes it clear, like, I'm not going anywhere. Get away from me. Like, I feel nothing to it. I don't feel anger. I don't feel hate. I just feel nothing. It's like, he says that, but there's still the little boy inside of him that misses his mom. But it's just like he has to bury that deep inside. And like, even to the point you could tell, like, even when he scared her away, you could tell it shook him a little bit. So it's just, he has this weird relationship even with his dad, where it's just kind of like, yeah, like, I want you to kind of take the keys to the throne and everything. And Skele's like, yeah, yeah, okay. And he's like, yeah, okay, that's all you have to really say. He's like, oh, thanks, Dad. Yes, sir. So there's some part of him that is a little torn, especially, you know, it's like, right, Parko's talking mad shit about Alma. And so he's, I don't know, it's hard to say what's in Skele's mind right now, but he does seem like he is a little torn, because it's like, right, you ain't seen your mom in 8 years, and part of me wonders is like, do you act like that because there's some part of you that regrets staying with your dad? Or at least, the very least, you trying to justify, like, yeah, I'm a better person. I'm able to be me now. I found my own, like, way forward because of my dad. Mom was always going to hold me back. Like, I'm curious, is that his thought process? So Z wanting to, like, finally break her, well, I keep calling her Z. I'm calling her Z because, Odie calls her that, but, you know, Alma, for her, it's like, the only way to, like, break the spell that Parko has, the control he has over Skele, is to break his power hold on the DMZ, is kind of her thought process. That's why she tries to go to Ono to, sway the scales towards Wilson, because that's the only way she's going to be able to get her son back. And I love that she's like, right, unlike you guys, I'm from the outside. I've been outside at DMZ, and that it's only a matter of time. Once they've kind of settled their business on the outside, they're going to come for this place, because this is unregulated land for them. They're eventually going to come back and, like, you know, get that. And it's like, no matter what you do, arm yourself up here in the DMZ, it's still going to be like 2 large countries versus this small nation, you know? It's like, it's probably going to be like a very 300 situation where it's going to be a mad slaughter. And if it's not just like everyone's dead, it's going to be a lot of you are going to die, and the rest are going to basically be subjugated. So can we also learn a little bit more about certain areas within the DMZ too? It's like, oh, like, Alma tried to go a certain direction, and Odie and Nico try to stop it, like, no, don't. And it was like, why? It's like, because that place is that's cannibal territory there, which was like, so there's cannibalism in the DM. Okay, and I guess it's like, that's the super fringe side that you kind of go, yeah, let them be. It's like, that's wild to know that. So the fact that they introduced that makes you think, like, that has to come up. Like, there's going to be some point when, like, Alma or someone else is going to be stuck in that territory, and you're going to have to make your way through, I'm assuming. The fact is they went out of their way to introduce that as like a, you know, maybe it's just like world building that never really gets touched on. Maybe it's something from the graphic novel that was touched on, but they're bringing it into this, kind of referencing it, but maybe not necessarily utilizing it. It might just be like, right, there's some people that went batshit crazy under these circumstances and ended up going to the super fringe side of things to the point of cannibalism. Or, I mean, or maybe it's supposed to be representative of, they were kind of forced into that situation because it was such a do or die type of situation. Everyone kind of went to their own, and maybe these are people who had nothing and ended up developing all of this because it was all they had. I don't know. It's just interesting because you see other spots in the DMZ prospering to some extent, but that's still the thing of, well, at least with Parko, it's like, his people, it's like, right, you fall in line, you get to prosper, and once again, Wilson is focused on his 12 blocks and then eventually wants to expand out, which I find that so interesting. But I guess it's like, right, I'd rather go beyond my 12 blocks and rule as governor and you know, and win the election because I can't let Parko do it. Like, I think that's it. He's, like, comfortable with his 12 blocks until it's like, right, Parko's trying to expand. I can't let that maniac run wild with all that power, so. I thought it was also an interesting thing with the Odie thing. Obviously, the continuation of his grandfather. Like, I don't know if these, like, the last words his grandfather ever said to him, or maybe these are just, like, his subconscious manifesting in his grandfather telling him stuff that he should know. I don't know. But obviously, he's listening to the preacher who is kind of crazy. But he eventually brought him that helmet. It's like, oh, it's you, me, and God, which he really appreciated. And it's like, I think Odie's trying to do his best of trying to find his way forward. He's trying to, you know, because it's like, right, my grandfather told me you always, to survive, to live, you have to kind of always be on the move. And it's like, she's like, and, you know, Z is like, Alma is like, do you have anywhere else to stay? And he was like, no. I was actually going to ask Rose to let me stay with her. And he also says, like, he knows that Rose is dead. So either he eventually went back to check up on it, or he already knew the way Alma was reacting, because the kid's got a pretty good head on his shoulders. So, but Alma's like, right, you can stay with me at the clinic. The sad thing is, she's not staying here long. She's not going to stay. Like, eventually she will leave. It's like, moment I can get Christian on my side, like, I'm bouncing. But he's not going to leave the DMZ, especially under these circumstances where their relationship currently stands. So, I don't know how, like, her plan to screw Parko over, it works in the end, jumping around a little bit. But it's like, that's definitely not going to get him more on your side. In fact, that's going to make you enemy numero uno in his eyes. But it's also like, right, she's got so much support in the end, and it's like, you can't do anything to her without that blowing up in your face. Because Ona is only siding with Wilson because she's like, I'll side with Alma, and whoever Alma decides to follow, which is Wilson, then I'll follow in suit. So it's like, you can't do anything without that blowing up in his face. So we'll see. It's also kind of his fault for, like, it probably would have worked out for you if you had just let her, like, if everything had played out the way she wanted it to with Christian. You know, it's kind of like, right, that was kind of a miscalculation on their part, but, you know, he wasn't going to go with her either way. I don't think there's anything Parko, he wouldn't have done anything to shift it to make it so that things would have worked out for them, but I think he definitely didn't enjoy being blindsided like that, so. I did like a lot of that debate, though, of, like, once again, like, there are different perspectives. He's all about, like, oh, let's unify. They won't be able to stop us. Whereas Wilson is like, no, this guy talks about unification. He wants to lead through fear. He wants to take away, you know, what were we before? He's basically want to take you back to the old ways of basically you fall in line. He's the one with all the power. Wilson's like, I want you to be free to make your own decisions. Because if you wanted to be ruled and make someone else make your decisions for you, you would have left when they asked you to leave on evacuation day, but you stayed here. And that means you made your choice, and you can continue to make your choice, live the way you want to, be who you want to, which obviously means a lot coming from him, considering he is the guy that decided to, he is a representation of, like, reinventing yourself and being who you want to, that freedom, you know? But, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, is there any true freedom here in the DMZ? To some extent, yeah, but it feels like you're always going to have to adhere to somebody else, to some extent, you know? Because even I'm like, I don't wholeheartedly believe everything Wilson says, but, you know, maybe there's validity to it. I just think Parko is the power-hungry madman that he is, but, you know, doesn't mean Wilson ain't all about power and stuff like that, because that's also, like, something about, scale. It's like, I have something, Parko gave me something you never could, that you took away from me. Power. Made me feel powerful, and not like I didn't have to rely on you. Now I have the strength to stand on my own 2 feet, because he probably felt like his mom was constantly stifling him in some shape or form, which, once again, why he feels that way, I'm assuming it's just his dad whispering in his ears. As he got older, he stopped being her baby boy, and Parko's influence grew more and more and more until, like, her son is completely warped from being Christian to being Scale. Until he runs into that singer at that bar, and then he's Christian again because he probably didn't want to let her know who he was. She probably knows him by name, but probably not many people know Skill by face. They know his reputation, not his face. So he presented himself as like, oh, I'm Christian, and she's like, oh, I'm Teeny, and they go back to his spot, check out his art, do their thing, but then you find out later on, oh, cool, you're on two sides of things. He's Parko's son. She has some correlation in relation to Wilson, because it seems like Wilson's, like maybe her, Teeny's parents are, were close to, Wilson, because at the very least he's like, oh, your dad would be proud of you or something like that. So there's some like familial, maybe family friend type of thing connecting them. But yeah, Skill wasn't too happy when it's like, right, we see each other, like, it's like, did you know who I was beforehand? But it doesn't seem like it. It seemed like, right, we were both not honest about who we were, because we got to pretend for a little bit. We're not those other people. We got to see and show off those other sides of ourselves, because he had talked about it like, a year ago was actually the first time he had ever seen Teeny perform. He doesn't remember the song, he just remembers how it made him feel. So there was something beautiful there, and that's why I'm like, okay, so are they going to be kind of like a Romeo and Juliet-esque thing going on? Maybe, maybe not. But like I brought up earlier, at the end of it all, Alma was able to convince Ona to side with Wilson, by giving all the power to her, and because she made it clear to everyone in the DMZ, like, not to side with Parko, that it's like, right, here and now you get to be yourselves. And that's also the thing of like, you're this driving force. You don't even care about the DMZ. You're just doing all this for that sake of your son. But she made it clear with even Ono, it's like, right, you have enough water here that you're even like washing with it. Like, people are struggling just to get any form of purified water. They're gonna get like a couple drops, and you've got enough here that you could even just wash your hands willy-nilly. That it's like, right, she's almost like I'm not judging you, because everyone in the DMZ is after the same thing, looking out for themselves, their best interests. And even she's no different. She's like, I'm only here for my son. Like, in the shifting and changing things in the DMZ, it's just like, no, I just want to screw Parko over because I want to get my son back. Which, will that even be enough, because even Ona was like, wait, Skell is your son? It's like, yeah, everyone has that reaction, because it's like, you're not going to be able to pull him away from all that's happened in that 8 years that shifted him. That's a lot of, and obviously Parko already had his claws in your son years ago, and obviously he has a lot of unresolved issues with you. He was willing to go as far as go with you during evacuation day, but when the time came, he bailed, I wonder, is there more to it than that, And like I said, does he bury a lot of his own reservations about it? Does he actually regret not leaving with his mom? Then I don't know. He seems content, but I just feel like there's something there that shows like, he's not 100% on board. But I guess it's like, right, he was probably hoping and never expected to ever run into his mom again, but to see her again so out of nowhere after 8 years, I think it drew back a lot more of that humanity he's kind of kept buried this entire time, because you had to bury that some form of your humanity to be the killer that he is, Despite all that, it hasn't stopped Alma from trying to save her son, but it's like, right, after all that he's done, like, is there going to be an easy way of just, like, clipping him free from Parko's hold of, like, that's still going to be ingrained in him. He still killed the people he's killed. Like, it doesn't wipe his slate clean in any shape or form, but for her, it doesn't matter. Because I think also what contributed to that is, like, it's my fault. Anything that you've ever done is my fault because I lost you. Or even if you decided to run away from me, it's still on me because maybe in her mind, it's like, I still couldn't, I should have been able to bring you with me. And because she says, like, she got knocked out, and then when she woke up, she was in, like, one of the other countries. So it's like, there's just so much, like I said, like, we're kind of getting like a micro slice of this story when there's just so many. I think the bigger parts aren't like, once again, that's world building stuff. That's not, it's setting the tone and just the state of the world, but this smaller scale story of a mother just wanting her son back and just the role she ends up playing in the grand scheme of what's going on in the DMZ. I think it's just at the heart of it. We'll see if the show kind of shifts, but like I said, I think it is just going to bounce back and forth between perspectives and circumstances. So it's going to be interesting to see where episode 3 takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.